The business class and the political class are one and the same. They work hand in hand. They are bitterly opposed to any form of ordinary working class Alabamians coming together, uniting around our fight for better lives.
We're going to start by talking about the recent union election in our hometown here in Huntsville at the Navistar plant. Workers there voted on Thursday on whether or not to join the United Auto Workers. Unfortunately, the vote did not go the way that we would have liked to have seen it go. Workers did not vote to unionize. The UAW put out a statement on that last week. Adam, can you share that with us?
Yeah, I wanted to share the statement from UAW, share a little bit of, from that first as we talk about this. You know, Huntsville is where we're broadcasting from. There were about 220 workers affected here at Navistar, also known as International Motors. And, 220 workers may not seem like a huge election by some standards, but when I looked back at all of the NLRB elections in Alabama over the past 5 years, or 5.5 years since January 2020, it's actually one of the biggest ones we've had go to an election in the last 5 or so years, made the top 5 at least. So, pretty significant. It's right in our backyard. So we wanted to open the show today by talking a little bit about it. And the UAW did put out a statement yesterday or Thursday evening, after the election results became clear. And they said, quote, "Once again, the statewide political and business elites have closed ranks to protect their power and privilege, stacking the deck against Alabama workers. The statewide business lobby and their allies in government poured tens of thousands of dollars into commercials, digital ads, and union-busting consultants who charge thousands of dollars per day to coerce workers and sow fear at International Motors Huntsville. When workers at the facility started organizing their union, over 60% of workers signed cards saying they wanted to form a union with their co-workers. Navistar management then violated the Neutrality Agreement in its contract with other UAW-represented employees and unleashed its aggressive, illegal union-busting campaign. The workers put up a brave fight in the face of illegal intimidation tactics and coercion, but ultimately it was not enough to overcome a defunded, understaffed National Labor Relations Board, NLRB, and a system that overwhelmingly favors the employer at the expense of workers. International Motors is a wholly owned subsidiary of Traton Group, a German company whose official policy is to remain neutral if workers decide they want to unionize. Instead of following its own policy, the company CEO descended on the plant for the first time in years to campaign against workers unionizing. Then, 10 days before the vote, as momentum built for the union, management tried to buy back support by reinstating a health insurance plan they had taken away last year. Now that the election is over, nothing stops them from ripping it away again. That's exactly why workers need a union. Without a contract, there's no guarantee, only empty promises. While the workers and the UAW followed the neutrality policy and the letter of the law, International Motors and Alabama's anti-worker corporate special interest groups stopped at nothing to prevent workers from using their power to improve their lives. The UAW will pursue every available avenue, including multiple unfair labor practice charges and the full use of the grievance procedure to win justice for these workers." So that's the official statement from the United Auto Workers about this election. And as they mentioned, there is a neutrality agreement in place because Navistar does have facilities and workers in other parts of the country, in some cases that are already unionized with the UAW. And as part of that contract, the company had agreed to neutrality. And, if you're not very familiar with that, basically the company agrees that at non-union facilities, they will remain neutral should the workers decide to organize. And, that's obviously an important thing to gain in a contract. It's very helpful when companies do abide by that because the idea is to give the workers a free, fair environment in which to organize, in which to, exercise their rights and really have a free choice. So we covered on the show a few weeks ago when this campaign first went public, when the filing went public at least, Navistar made some interesting comments to right-wing press here in Alabama. And I'm not a lawyer. I'm not representing any party here. I'm just an amateur outside observer. But what I saw was a company that was already violating certainly the spirit, if not the letter, of the Neutrality Agreement right out of the gate. And as the statement mentioned, they flew the CEO in. We reported last week on the union busters that were in the facility getting paid, ungodly amounts of money. It's come to my attention that the union busters did file finally with the federal government, like they're supposed to, the day of the election, right? So they had been operating in there for some time, doing their thing, getting paid hundreds, if not thousands of dollars an hour to intimidate folks, right? To come in and try to sway people to vote against their best interest, to vote against their coworkers, and to stand with management. And something interesting that they also brought up in that statement, was the healthcare aspect. A lot of the union facilities have been able to win better healthcare than what you have in Huntsville. Huntsville workers have been experiencing some real problems with healthcare. It was my understanding that the company had moved to United Health at some point recently. And if you're not in Alabama, you may not know what a big problem that is. But if you're local, you know that Blue Cross Blue Shield dominates this state, right? Like the healthcare market is almost entirely captured by Blue Cross Blue Shield in Alabama. So if you have an insurance provider that is not Blue Cross Blue Shield, chances are it's probably going to, be worse, either less coverage or more expensive or perhaps both. And wouldn't you know it, a week or so before the election, the company, I guess out of just the goodness of their hearts, decided to bring back the Blue Cross Blue Shield health insurance. Isn't that something? So it shows me, at least, as, again, someone just kind of from the outside looking in, that the company was scared. The company was scared of the workers coming together, exercising their rights, building their power on the shop floor. And so they dangled out carrots. They had the sticks, they had the carrots. They had the union busters, but then they also were willing to, throw out some healthcare improvements at the last minute to try to win off enough workers. And as the statement pointed out, the really scary thing is there's nothing stopping them now from taking that healthcare back, right? Taking it away, making it worse. They can do that because there's no union contract. That is one of the important reasons why unions fight for collective bargaining agreements, right? To get something in writing, to get a binding contract in writing so that your healthcare, your pay, your working conditions, your safety, all of that is not just subject to the whims of management. And they can't just change it whenever they feel like it, right? They actually have to go through you and your coworkers to make those sort of changes. So, it's tough. This is Huntsville. This is our backyard. So it's tough to see a loss in the South. It's tough to see a loss, particularly close to home. I would encourage those workers who have been organizing to keep organizing. Stay at it. Don't give up. Keep having conversations with your coworkers. Keep building effective committees. It's really, really important what you've done so far. And I think there's still opportunity to keep going. UAW said that they're going to continue this fight in various ways, whatever that may look like. We'll see. Again, it looks to me like the company violated their agreements in multiple ways. So we'll see how that pans out.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
But most importantly, I just want to send our love and solidarity to those workers who have been organizing, who were willing to face the odds and take on not just the company's management, but the entire business establishment in town and in the state. Because the Business Council of Alabama unleashed like a flurry of advertising, of propaganda. You know, people kept reaching out to me and Jacob because they were getting the anti-UAW ads on their YouTube, right? They were going on YouTube to listen to music and getting bombarded with propaganda from the Business Council of Alabama. And, you know, there were people who reached out to us who were very upset about it. Some retired union members who heard some of these ads and were like, why are they lying? Why are they lying to people? Why are they spending money to lie to people to get them scared, right? It's very disturbing. But it's not anything new. We know in Alabama it is an uphill battle because there's going to be that kind of fierce opposition. We know that the business class and the political class are essentially one and the same. They work hand in hand. And we know that they are bitterly opposed to workers coming together. They're opposed to worker power. They're opposed to labor unions. They're opposed to any form of worker power, of just ordinary working class Alabamians coming together, uniting around our common interest and trying to fight for better lives, is perceived as a threat to the status quo. But that's why we have to keep going, right? And we can't give up, and we have to keep organizing. We have to keep pushing. We have to keep having those conversations with folks and building our muscles of democracy and collective action. That's really, really important. We cannot allow folks like the Business Council of Alabama to dictate our future because, you know, let's be honest, Alabama, we brag about being one of the best places for business. And, you know, folks like the BCA and the politicians love to talk about that Alabama is a great place to do business. But what about the workers, right? Because most of us are not business owners. Most of us are working class people. The vast majority of people have to work to feed our families, right? And it's our labor that powers Alabama's economy. So what about us, right? If you're saying it's such a great place to do business, but let's look at the quality of life, because Alabama ranks at the top of everything bad and at the bottom of everything good, right? When you look at poverty, mass incarceration, health outcomes, education, you name it. Infrastructure, right? Alabama has some of the worst quality of life for working class people in the entire developed world. We have less rights, less benefits, less public services than millions and millions and millions of our fellow workers. And that ain't right. It ain't right. And that's what the Business Council of Alabama is defending. That's the broken status quo they want us to cling to. And I'll just add, wrapping up here on this, that I did reach out to the Business Council of Alabama. I did invite them on the program. So stay tuned. We'll see if they are willing to defend their propaganda on the air. You know, they have an open invite to the Valley Labor Report. They are welcome to appear. So if some intern is listening to this, make sure y'all check your email. I did send it. You have been invited. And we'd love to have someone on the show to talk about it. Why do you want to spend so much money to confuse and intimidate Alabamians?
I just want to make a couple of additional points there that, you know, and we pointed this out last week when we were reacting to the BCA ad. You know, some of the fine print at the end of the ad identifies the BCA, the Business Council of Alabama, the Council of Bosses in the state, as an organization dedicated to advancing the collective interests of the business community.
AKA a union,
yes,
of business owners.
I mean, that's literally what these chambers of commerce, these business councils, the councils of bosses, that's what they are. They are unions of businesses. And it is so funny that these organizations are, trying to say that, what's good for us as in many times big multi-billion-dollar international corporations, what's good for us is to actually come together with other people within our class to advocate for ourselves collectively, because even the big multinational, multi-billion-dollar corporations are stronger together. Like, the business community is stronger when Amazon and Yellowwood and Alabama Power and Regions and Navistar and Mercedes and all of these companies come together and have one voice to help them lobby in the State House, to help them put out these ads against workers, to do things in the collective interest of the business class. There is value in a collective organization of businesses, and they are trying to tell workers that there is no value in organizations that advocate on the behalf of the collective interests of the working class. They say, no, us multi-billion-dollar international corporations, we need each other. It's actually going to be better for you if you, as an individual worker who has literally negative wealth because you don't own anything, because you rent, because you have debt, you have negative personal wealth. It'll actually be better for you as an individual if you negotiate with us individually. You don't need this kind of stuff that we've got, this collective organization, to advocate on behalf of your class interests. You need to negotiate as a single individual. That is just, the irony there is so funny. And if you don't hear anything else that we say, I hope you take away that, the businesses have a union. The bosses have a union. Maybe I should think about if I need a union, if the bosses have one. And then also, we mentioned that the union busters, these folks have been paid literally hundreds of dollars an hour. I mean, I'm looking at one of the filings for one of them, like $3,000 a day plus expenses.
Wow.
To union bust. And, under federal law, these guys are supposed to file with the Office of Labor Management Standards, the OLMS, and disclose the nature of their agreement, what they are being asked to do, how much they are being paid, the duration of the contract, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because the federal government has said the transparency is a value that we want to that we want to have in the world. If a company is, during the course of a union election, hiring a bunch of people to persuade their employees not to unionize, it is good for the employees to, at the very least, know who these people are and how much they're being paid. And these union busters, this is literally their job, their professional job, and they did not file these records until the day of and the day after the election. That way, people would not go into the voting booth knowing exactly who was in there, telling them not to unionize and exactly how much they were getting paid. That's, these people are doing it as a job. They know this, and they did that on purpose so that workers at this plant in Huntsville didn't know how much money they were getting paid and didn't know exactly who they were and where they were coming from, because they don't live in Huntsville. It's so gross.
But, they have the audacity to say that the union is some sort of outside foreign interest, right? When they are literally bringing in outside specialists to persuade you, right? And that was something else that really stuck in my craw about the BCA advertising and propaganda, is this idea that unions are not for Alabama. That unions are not for us, right? That sweet home Alabama, we don't need unions around here, right? And that's the vibe they want to portray. But, that's so ignorant of our history. Mm-hmm. It is so ignorant of our history, and they don't want us to remember our history. They don't want us to remember that 1 in 4 Alabama workers used to belong to labor unions. They don't want us to remember that Walker County, Alabama used to be the most unionized county in the whole damn country. They don't want us to think about that. They don't want us to remember that white coal miners and black coal miners were organizing together at the height of Jim Crow to win better lives, to fight for their communities. That's the kind of heritage we have of unionism here in this state, and the idea that it's some sort of like foreign or outside or Yankee interest is just total BS. It's ignorant of our history. We have over 100,000 union members here in the state of Alabama. We have higher union density than all of our neighboring states, Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, Tennessee, right? We have that. There are more members of unions than the Business Council of Alabama, if I had to guess. We just don't have the money they have, right? So, it's gross, it's disgusting, and, I think it's just going to be really, really important that we, as labor unionists and as our allies here in the community, that we keep building something special and stronger and something that can withstand these sort of attacks. And I think it's really important that we spread this truth and spread this news to folks that Alabama absolutely is home to unionism, and that workers in Alabama do not deserve any less than workers in Illinois or workers in Michigan or workers in California or anywhere else. Why do we deserve less? And why are you spending so much damn money to convince us of that?
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.